Ze Carioca is perhaps one of Disney's least known characters amongst North American audiences, but one whose stardom matches or arguably eclipses that of Mickey Mouse within Latin America. Jose, Joe, or Ze as he is known to his Latin American fans, was the result of a 1940s goodwill tour of Central and South America undertaken by Walt Disney and his team, and devised for 1942 feature film Saludos Amigos and its 1944 follow-up, The Three Caballeros. Unlike other characters of this time period, such as his good friend Donald Duck, Carioca never quite sustained popularity in North America, fading into relative obscurity following a 2-year stint in comic strips. Despite maintaining popularity in Latin America, Carioca has only returned to public conscience in the United States over the last decade. In 2019, Jose Carioca turned 77 years old, and while his design and personality have remained mostly the same over the years, his story is one certainly worth telling. In this video, I will trace the evolution and history of Carioca right from his first appearance in 1942 to today in 2019. To do so, we will look at all of his film and television appearances and touch on his prolific and influential history in comic books, in this edition of Explicando a Disney. In the early 1940s, during World War II, many Latin American countries had come under the influence of Nazi Germany, and furthering a decade-old bid to maintain harmony between the Americas known as the Good Neighbor Policy, the US Department of State and the Agency for Inter-American Affairs made bids with Hollywood figures to partake in goodwill tours of South America to smooth over animosity between nations. Walt Disney was one such figure approached to be a cultural ambassador. The government offered Walt a grant to tour South America for the purposes of researching and producing a series of films that would rightfully depict Brazilian culture as friendly, lovable, exotic, and modern. In effect, abolishing Nazi influence and reinforcing the special relationship between the US and Latin America. To persuade Walt to take the trip, the government promised to underwrite and guarantee the films to the tune of $500,000. That is, they would wholly cover the costs and revenue regardless of how well they performed at the box office. At a time where World War II had put a stranglehold on his international film earnings, and when he was facing labour unrest with a large animators strike underway, it was an offer too good for Walt to refuse. And in 1940, he and a team of 18 artists, musicians, writers, and family members headed to Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, and Peru. For the film, the US government wanted Walt to depict his characters partaking in friendly interactions with new Latino characters, who would also help showcase the country's cultures and personalities. In Walt's words, "We had one purpose, to make a picture both Americas would like, so that in the end they would like one another better. Our backgrounds are different, but our future we know has to be the same." While in Brazil, Walt and his team soon came to discover the country's fascination with the Brazilian parrot, an animal deeply ingrained in the culture of their peoples, who found identification with the clever, streetwise, carefree, and eccentric bird. Walt apparently heard a plethora of parrot-themed jokes and became enraptured by comedic stories featuring legendary regional character Papagayo. He sent his artists to zoos and museums to research parrots and then sketch caricatures of Papagayo. Said sketches would form the conceptual beginnings of Jose Carioca. His name would derive from popular Brazilian name Jose, perhaps even from musician and voice actor Jose Oliveira, who would lend his voice to the character and inspire his movements, and Carioca from the word given to the natives and culture of Brazil. Carioca would first appear in 1942's Saludos Amigos, Walt's first goodwill feature, and was positioned as a friendly ally of Donald Duck and his carefree antithesis, trading hot-headed temper for a cool, suave sophistication inspired by Brazilian Malandros, rogue hustlers and ladies' men celebrated in Brazilian culture. From them, Carioca took his lively personality, his love for the samba, and his dress sense. He would be drawn as a typical Malandros, in tailcoat, Panama straw hat and bow tie with an umbrella. Carioca would in a way act as the film's Brazilian cultural ambassador, showing Donald the sights and sounds of Brazil, introducing him to the samba and teaching him how to dance. He was a character that epitomized all the virtues of his culture, and it's perhaps quite fair to say that no other recurring character in the Disney lexicon is so inherent of and so beautifully born from his culture than José. While his appearance in the film was only short, coming in at a little over 5 minutes, Carioca was a hit with audiences, especially those in Latin America, where he became an instant favourite character. In fact, his signature samba, Aquarela do Brasil, or Watercolors of Brazil, was made famous by the film and became a cultural music standard. Walt so successfully achieved the film's aim that film historian Alfred Charles has noted that it did more to cement a community of interest between the peoples of America in a few months than the State Department had in 50 years. Between 1942 and 1944, the Silly Symphonies Sunday newspaper strip in the US was transformed into one starring Carioca, which would feature his daily exploits living in suburbia alongside both avian and human characters. While these strips are considered a rarity today, they must have been popular with audiences of the time for them to last 2 years. It's worth noting that these strips have recently been reprinted in full colour in the Silly Symphonies Volume 4 book from IDW. I will place an affiliate link for this down below if you'd like to check it out. Carioca would also appear in his own 12-page story, The Carnival King, published in the 27th issue of Walt Disney Comics and Stories in 1942, where he would be featured alongside two characters who seem reminiscent of the crows from the previous year's film Dumbo. Carioca would next appear in 1944's Saludos Amigos follow-up, The Three Caballeros, the first ever Disney sequel, where he was once again paired with Donald to continue his cultural education. Carioca, the ladies' man that he is, shows Donald how to embrace the samba as the music of love, leading to a hybrid live-action animation segment, the first ever in a feature-length film, which sees the two dancing with famed Brazilian singer and dancer Aurora Miranda. The film would also introduce Panchito, a Mexican rooster who, along with Carioca and Donald, form the Three Caballeros. Together, Carioca and Pastals, in a strangely bizarre and mature segment, teach Donald about Latino women on a Mexican beach. While the film was less propagandistic than Saludos Amigos, it was strangely less popular, but regardless, it cemented Carioca as a staple of early Disney. 1948's package feature Melody Time would feature Carioca's last appearance in a classic Disney film. Carioca would appear in the film's final segment, Blame It on the Samba, which would in turn be re-released in 1955 as a standalone short. The sequence would once again see Carioca and Donald partaking in a samba in an effort to dance their blues away. Despite not appearing in another feature film and thus over the decades slowly slipping from the North American conscience, Carioca would become a staple of Brazilian comic books as a supporting character in Donald Duck's own series, Pato Donald, beginning with issue number 1 in 1950. Throughout the 1950s, Carioca's visual appearance would remain fairly consistent with those in the film, designed after the Brazilian Malandros, though he would not be depicted with his cigar. He would continue in this look for 1960 Walt Disney Presents television episode Two Happy Amigos, a somewhat spiritual sequel to Three Caballeros, where this time Carioca comes to visit Donald in the USA, with Donald taking him on a tour of the country, including the Florida Everglades, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone National Park, and Maine North Woods. Carioca would again be featured briefly in 1962 Wonderful World of Color episode Carnival Time, acting as a Brazilian correspondent on Ludwig van Drake's report on the Rio Carnival. In 1961 in Brazil, Carioca spun off into his own comic series Ze Carioca, which would rotate with the Pato Donald series every other week. Each series would be presented bi-weekly and share the same numbering system. The Donald comics would feature even numbers, while the Carioca comics would feature odd numbers. Carioca's earlier solo appearances would be much the same as his appearances in the Pato Donald series and the films, though though during the first year of publication, he was slowly morphed into a modern everyman, being given everyday clothes such as a t-shirt and pants, and would be pictured in bare feet. In 1985, the Ze Carioca and Pato Donald comics would separate at issue 1751, and each series would continue forward weekly using the same issue numbering. Throughout this time, Carioca had continued to be depicted the same way he had since the 1960s. In 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Carioca would appear in an incredibly quick blink and you'll miss him cameo right at the very end of the film, alongside a plethora of other cartoon characters from various studios. Despite how quick his appearance, Roger Rabbit marked Carioca's first theatrical appearance for 40 years, and he hasn't featured in another for over 30 more. The Ze Carioca comics would continue into the 1990s, with Carioca himself being given his first modern redesign for 30 years. He would now be depicted as a hip, young, tropical bird wearing a t-shirt, jeans, tennis shoes, and usually with a backwards baseball cap. This is a design that Carioca would continue in for the remainder of his modern comic book life. Carioca would also feature prominently on Brazilian children's television throughout the 1990s on the TV Colosso Disney Club block, which would feature a puppet version of Carioca in his 1990s attire, introducing Disney cartoons and interviewing occasional guests. Though in 1999 he would make his return to North American TV with a brief role in Mickey Mouse Works' short Mickey Tries to Cook, which was later featured in an episode of House of Mouse. Here he is seen in his classic attire working his Malandros charm on Minnie, promising to make her and Mickey a delicious Brazilian dinner, which he later serves up under a romantic moonlit setting. While this appearance was again quite short, it's quite possible that it reintroduced Carioca to a new North American audience, as his appearances in US media have risen since. In fact, not long after, he would appear in another episode of House of Mouse alongside both Donald and Panchito to perform a salsa-inspired tune to the club's patrons, marking the first appearance of the three Caballeros together on screen since the 1942 movie. American cartoonist Don Rosa would also feature Carioca and the Caballeros in two Western-inspired adventure comics in the 2000s, Three Caballeros Ride Again and The Magnificent Seven -4 Caballeros. Both multi-issue stories would first appear in the Danish Donald Duck comic series before being featured in the English Walt Disney Comics and Stories series. In both appearances, Carioca would appear in his traditional garb for the first time in comics since a once-off Brazilian story in 1983. Carioca would also be integrated into Disney theme parks in the mid-2000s. In 2007, the Grand Fiesta Tour starring the Three Caballeros attraction would open at the Mexico Pavilion at Walt Disney World's Epcot in Florida, marking the first pavilion attraction to feature characters from an existing property. The attraction, which is still in operation, included brand new animation of Carioca, Panchito, and Donald, and was later revamped to include animatronics of the three characters. Carioca can additionally be seen throughout Disney parks around the world in meet and greets, parades, and various shows. While his appearances in the American parks are fairly rare, he does appear quite often at Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea. Carioca has more recently appeared in a number of small cameos in the current Mickey Mouse cartoon series. In 2014's O Futebol Clásico as a football commentator, 2015's Feliz Cumpleaños alongside the Three Caballeros, and 2018's Brazil set Carnival, where he appears on a float at the Rio Carnival. In 2017 episode of Mickey and the Roadster Racers, Mickey's Perfecto Day, the Three Caballeros once again make a grand appearance, and Carioca is seen in CG animation for the very first time. The short sees Mickey and the gang travel to Spain for a race, where Donald meets up with his old bandmates to perform a Plaza reunion concert, and in another first, Daisy joins the group as a fourth Caballeros. In 2018, Carioca and the Caballeros made a similar appearance in the DuckTales episode The Town Where Everyone Was Nice, where they once again reunite for a performance, this time in Brazil. In a typical DuckTales adventure, all is not what it seems, and Carioca ends up assisting Donald, Scrooge and the kids kids in fighting off evil. Here Carioca appears in his traditional attire, but is drawn in a more stylized, angular design that makes use of classic animation techniques such as pie eyes. Following this appearance, the Caballeros finally made the jump to their own series, The Legend of the Three Caballeros, which premiered on the Disney Life app in the Philippines in 2018 and is set to launch in the US on the Disney Plus app in November 2019. The series is the first major headliner to star the three characters in 75 years, and features the team as globe-trotting adventurers fighting off mystic evil as they're dragged into a cosmic war. The series is drawn in a traditional animation style, and Carioca once again takes on his classic appearance, albeit without cigar. While Carioca may be finally getting his dues on English programming, it unfortunately seems that his life in Brazilian publications has come to an untimely end. The Ze Carioca comics remained weekly publications before becoming monthly in more recent years. With longtime publisher Abril losing the rights to Disney Comics in Brazil, publication on Ze Carioca sadly ceased with issue 2446 in June of 2018. Carioca appeared in comics practically uninterrupted for just shy of 70 years. Despite the cancellation of his comic series, Carioca remains wildly popular in Brazil, and if we have learnt anything so far, it's that this tough little parrot can never be kept down. And with that, it's over to you guys out there. I want to know, what is your favourite José Carioca appearance over the last 77 years? Fire away in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos and you'd like to see more like it in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen, as well as that like button down below for that little extra support. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.